works.
Okay, so can we start then?
Yeah, please, Mario, please.
So hello, I'm Mario Rodrigues. I'm the CEO of Upwords, and welcome to How Can the Linguistic Experience Boost Internationalization? I'll be here for at least the next 30 minutes, I think. So bear with me. I'll start by explaining who Upwords is, of course. We are an LSP, or a language service provider, and we have 20 years in the market. We have translated over 100 million words, and we have more than 900 native specialized translators. Basically, what specialized translator means is that they're specialized in the field of expertise. Let's say that the translator that does marketing does not do engineering normally. They're specialized by the type of subject, and that's how they're so good. Then we translate in about 121 languages. Of course, this is sometimes we have more, sometimes less, but this is more or less the average. Our expertise is human translation, the normal human translation, but we also have machine translation. This is used normally when whether the budget or the time is scarce. So this means that we translate, we're using our neural AI engineered engines. So basically, this is not something that you find on the market. It's a better translation solution. And then we post-edit by using humans, of course, to deliver a good quality. Then we have localization. You'll see this term used here in the presentation along with translation. Basically, localization is when we have a strategy in place to do something in depth. It means really adapting a lot of content to a target market and making it have the feel of local. So it's not just translating one document. It's a more deep approach when people or clients really want to go global. Then we have copywriting, which is self-explanatory. And then multilingual SEO. For those that are not very familiar with marketing, it just means search engine optimization in foreign language is done by native local experts. And then subtitling and dubbing, which is, constitutes a full array of linguistic services. That's what we want to give our clients. Some of them are here on the right side. We have from Binance, NetChats, PLM Jota from Portugal, and also Navigator. Basically, from the fintech to the legal industry, we cover a bit of everything. Well, at least we try. Some industries, of course, we don't cover, but it's something that we always try to consider when we start a project. So next, when we will start about we'll start on the topic of internationalization, and we'll start with a study that shows that 78% of the consumers does not make an important purchasing decision if the product or service description is not available in their language. Then also 92% of consumers, including those who speak more than one language, prefer to visit a website in their native language. So this is important to give you an idea of the scope of translation, right? I mean, it gives you, it can pretty much help set the topic of linguistic experience. So the next slide explains or summarizes what good translation can do for you. So translation basically helps drive revenue and fuel international business expansion by getting your message to be understood by your target customers and geographies. It also dramatically improves marketing by creating brand recognition, inclusion, and proximity. And in the end, we deliver a seamless customer experience, which is what is, of course, the goal, right? To have bigger proximity and making the client more close to the brand. So now that we've seen the potential of translation, let's drill down to the topic of the linguistic pitfalls that we see. So we'll talk about strategy first, which is connected to the other three topics. We have three different types of contents where we see pitfalls happening, namely websites, social media and digital content, and then corporate communication. So what does exactly lack of strategy mean? For instance, sometimes you start translating materials from your native language straight away. Well, that can mean that you're going to pay as high as 300% or more. So our suggestion is to, in most cases, going for English first, because there's more qualified resources since the pool of translators is larger. It also allows you to prepare a version thinking of translation already. So you'll prepare a more neutral version, and you can prepare it in terms of consistency to then translate into several languages, which will help you really think about translation. Because normally the first version is something that you just created without ever thinking about translation before. And this one, it starts helping you really thinking about how you can go from there. So this will reduce costs and improve consistency across languages because of the factors that I explained before. So the next pitfall is or starting to translate materials, but not being able to achieve or know how to achieve or track the quality. So basically, this will potentially will result in low return on investment. Well, at Upwords, we never start the localization project without the creation of a structured style guide and glossary for accountants. This increases the consistency, of course, and also the quality of our content, and trains the translation teams for future requests. So continuing down this path of strategy, the other thing that we see is that people start to translate materials without a specific approach on terminology. Again, there's a potential low return on investment due to the lack of structure. So make sure you choose your key terms for your organization. Normally, we create a glossary with these terms and have them translated and approved before we start the translation project. And in the end, we'll use these key terms to do an automated quality assurance process with tools that we have to make sure that every language is following and abiding to the glossary. So this will increase the consistency and the quality of your content because it assures that at least the key terms are well translated and that you're conveying the message across well. Next, we'll see issues that we find on websites. So the first one is creating a website without ever thinking about translation. So make sure that the website has the potential to feature different languages. Potential technical issues, for instance, is the right to left languages, Arabic, or double byte character languages like Mandarin, Thai. Of course, Arabic and Chinese, for instance, open big markets, and it's something that you don't want to miss, right? So it's also cheaper to do it right from the start, because then you won't have to go back and correct everything, and it reduces costs and in the implementation time. So continuing on the topic of websites, the other pitfall we see is having the website only available in English or Portuguese, which causes low proximity. So your company website should be available in the languages that in the languages of your target markets, the regions, to increase proximity, of course. There are some strategic languages you must consider in order to reach an audience or territory. Let's just think of an example like Spain. if you really want to be in Catalonia, maybe you should use Catalan to be closer to your audience, right? Instead of Spanish, because there, there's this controversy on belonging and with Catalonia and Spain. So for sure, Catalan will always bring your audience closer. And you can also have a more strategic approach. Like, let's just say, for instance, if you want to reach 17 markets with one language, what you can do is pick take your Spanish European Spanish version and convert it to Latin American Spanish version, so that you can reach the 17 Latin American countries. This, for instance, is a more strategic option that can help you get a lot of revenue with just one translation. This is not a big problem because Latin American Spanish is pretty much similar in terms of vocabulary. Of course, it's always ideal to have one per country, one for Chile, one for Bolivia. This is the ideal, but Latin American Spanish will cut it, just put it like this. So next on our website issues is country flags. This is seen so much, and it creates potential geopolitical issues because flags don't represent languages, and it's very offensive and causes very low proximity in the user. So this is something that really pushes some buttons. So don't use flags to identify languages. Use only the language names in the target languages, because this creates proximity. So use Portuguese, Francais, Espanol, Deutsch if you want to identify the languages of your website, because as soon as the native speakers see this in their language, not just Portuguese or French or Spanish, that will help them, gain a sense of belonging, and that's the best option that you can use. Still on the topic of websites and also on design, we have my website was not designed to take into account local aspects such as currencies or symbols. Well, if a currency isn't right, it might even prevent you from selling, for instance. So that can be a big issue, technical and cultural. Choose relevant content for the target audience and adapt it right. You need to localize all aspects such as currencies and numbers in date and time formats, and this will help you have a better customer experience, and also you have a higher selling potential if you do this right. Still on websites, continuing. My website isn't optimized when it comes to SEO. We didn't consider keywords for all language versions available. Well, if the keyword research wasn't done, you might just not be found. So keyword research is not translation. So you should not translate literally just the keywords. You should also, for instance, use Google's keyword planner and not the direct translation. This means that you will see how many hits a term has after translation to see if it's the best option, to see if that's what the market uses. For instance, we have here holidays in Orlando instead of vacation in Orlando. If you're talking to an American audience, no one is going to look for holidays in Orlando. So if you create a website in English to use also in America as well, in the UK, well, it's more likely that won't be found, and that will be reflected in your revenue. Then you need to consider other things, such as Russians prefer to use Yandex and the Chinese Baidu instead of Google. So if you want to go and sell to these markets, you also need to find a way how to make good keyword for marketing in these markets. And finally, we will have some final considerations and suggestions on the website topic. And the first one is to use Unicode, preferably UTF-8, which is most well known and works well in terms of character display. So you should also separate the content from the code and store it, have a version tracking method of your documents outside the website platform. You don't want your content bundled in coding. So keep a repository where you have texts before HTML or XML. And finally, doing a linguistic testing before launching the new version of your website or app. Remember to have someone native clicking and checking every button or window. This will help you to prevent mistakes. And finally, of course, remember that adding a new language to your website amplifies the potential for growth. Each language that you add is a new market. And you should, if you have the budget, of course, try to do that. Now, one more study about consumer behavior. So do you know that 95% of Chinese online shoppers prefers using websites in their own language? Also, 72% of consumers spend most or all of their time on websites in their own language. Since we're talking already about online consumer behavior, let's go to social media and the digital content pitfalls, namely communicating only on the native language of the company in social media accounts and not making digital assets available in other languages. Again, this is, well, at least causes very low proximity and visibility. So it's good to consider having a version in English and at least another language when communicating in social media platforms and accounts. And the same goes for digital assets. Ideally, if the budget allows, you should make digital assets available in all languages and also social media, of course. When we're talking about digital assets, we're talking about subtitle videos, for instance, or dubbing them. This will help create a more seamless experience from the user that goes to your website. So also, website or social media, of course, Facebook, etc. Plan and research target market, target your account for each locale, develop an hashtag strategy. Of course, keep in mind the carrot limits for translation. Let's say that you have tweets and posts and images to share, especially tweets and also posts, depending on the platform you use. For instance, from English to Spanish, there's about 25% expansion rate, and the same with Portuguese. So when you have a strategy for social media, you need to consider these aspects because it might prevent you from communicating in other languages if you have, or having to shorten the translations very much, which has happened with us, and sometimes things end up by being almost intelligible and unintelligible, and that's not the goal. So always have this in mind. Now going to corporate communication. Well, what we see many times, it's relying on native company workers or friends to translate brochures, presentations, and other materials when needed. This can cause potential brand image damages. Remember, not everyone has the linguistic know-how for perfect writing, let alone in many different languages. You shouldn't just have multilingual speakers, you should have excellent writers. How many of you know people that text you with mistakes? Your friend, your coworker might not be available in the future, or if the volume is high. So you should rely on a team of subject matter experts, which will be available for further needs. A three-step process, which is what we use, or any ISO certified company should use at least 2 steps. We do 3, but it also depends on the case. So this 3-step ensures that there will be no translation errors that can compromise your brand's image. Just think of Facebook, Unilever, Instagram, and or Netflix, how much they have expanded betting on the localization of content. For instance, they use Facebook in another language other than yours. This is a matter of strategy. So if you want to go global, if you want to build a wall, let's use this analogy, sure, go ahead, hire a mason. But if you want to build a house or a building, in that case, you need to hire a contractor that knows the ins and outs, minimizes the risks, and makes sure that your investment is well placed. And the same goes for translation. You need the company that creates the right workflow with the set of specialized translators. So this causes, if you do this right, good reinforcement of the company image to fuel brand recognition and growth. Remember, a single translation error might be very costly, and it can cost you a fortune sometimes. It's on something that is legal or and financial or even marketing sometimes. All of your hard advertising and marketing work can be undone with a few misspellings or out of place words. So as a brand, you have a responsibility to deliver impeccable language level, no matter how formal or informal your communication style is. Grammar, vocabulary, and syntax are fundamental factors to take into account that can make or break your content. So the best way to prevent costly translation errors is at least to have your documents translated by a NISA certified LSP. And that will probably avoid some headaches in the future. On this topic, I really want to share a real story now. This is the story of the biggest pharmaceutical packaging company in Portugal that hired us to help expand and take care of their website. So when that happens, what we do normally is we ask and collect reference material. So the thing that they had with more, we involved their first translating experience, and what they shared with us was a brochure, super innovative in terms of design, that actually had a very successful CPHI Worldwide Trade Fair, which is pharmaceutical and packaging trade fair, and everyone picked up this brochure. It was great, and they loved the design, and it was really something that they considered a success. But actually, they did find it strange that they didn't get as many leads or businesses after that, because they sold out this brochure, but for some reason the numbers of the deals they made in this fair weren't that great. So when we reviewed this brochure, we didn't review it for the sake of correcting it, but we used it as reference. So we found numerous linguistic issues and also translation mistakes. And we warned the client. As soon as they heard about this, they did want to find the impacts of this in their leads or potential clients. So they followed up with those that didn't convert, or that they knew that they had picked up the catalog. So what they found was that most of them considered that the catalogs were unprofessional, and they also raised suspicion regarding their professionalism. So basically, what happened was the client had hired a fast, cheap online translation company, the first one they saw, and thought that everything would go well. But basically, they didn't use specialized native speakers or even proofread the work by a second native speaker. So what happened was this beautiful brochure that cost about 6,000 euros did not have such a good return on investment. And probably not only the 6,000 euros were kind of, not very well used, because they could bring much more business. and they potentially lost a lot of euros in packaging orders. So here's the first page, so no one thinks we made this up. I put this page here because I kind of think it's a funny contradiction. Oh, what happened here? So I think it's a funny contradiction. It says you can rely on us, and then it's full of mistakes. Of course, I anonymized the name of the company, although they allowed us to share, but I don't really want to do that right now. But as you can see, it says you can rely on us, and then it's full of unreliable things. And then that's a more common story than what you might think. But I don't like stories with sad endings, and so there's more to it. As the title says, the same client, different results. So this client, again, in the CHPI trade fair, after we started taking over the translation, of course, saw a spike of interest from other markets like Korea, Japan, Morocco, South Africa, etc. And they didn't have this interest before, so they decided to localize their content in making a campaign for 45 countries in 15 days. So we only had 3 weeks before the start of this, and they basically expected us to nurture the leads, and they wanted to nurture their leads and find new ones. And the plan was to use display marketing, push notifications, this means mobile, and email marketing, and also in-app marketing, which means advertising inside the event app, and then directing clients to the localized landing pages with lead magnets in each of the languages. If you're not aware of this term, lead magnets, this is something used in marketing, and basically means that you give valuable client content like an ebook, and then the person has to give their details to be able to download. So the scenario did seem very daunting, because they didn't have any kind of localization program in place. So we had to adapt our existing style guides and glossaries, and also they also wanted A/B testing on their localization. So it means that, for instance, if they send email campaigns, they wanted to send 2 versions and then choose the one that worked better. So this was kind of a big challenge, because the whole budget was 26,000 euros. This is not much when you're talking about 45 countries and 45 languages. So it was a really challenging process. But I like to leave the best to the end, and like everyone. So again, same client, different results. The investment on localization was 26,000 euros, and the return on investment was on localization, already taking into account other non-localization costs, was 2.3 million euros in new business from the regions targeted. So this represented the percentage of 4,500% in translation return on investment. This is a great case of successful use of money, right? And so I like to end always on a positive tone, and this was a very good example, and how you can do things well and get good results. Finally, I'll just share a slide on what our global clients think about us. You can find the same in our website. I would just like to thank you all for being here, to listening to me. You have my email here, mrodrigues@upwordstranslation.com. So if you really want to know more, just reach out. Arnold for sure will we'll share the presentation with you and the video, so you'll have time to go over this. And thank you again for allowing me to share.